Hey guys, Raphael here of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Did you say podcast? Dudes, dudettes, you're listening to the podcast on the Geekcast Radio Network. Cowabunga!
Hello and welcome to episode 197 of the Cinema Geeks. I am one of your Cinema Geeks, OptimusSolo, and joining me as he has been for this entire Turtles series is MovieRevolt. Dan, hello.
Hello. It is good being a turtle, but not always good to watch a Turtles movie. So
today we are going to be talking about the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie from 2014. Was it just called TMNT or was it called the long form Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
It was called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were they're putting all the letters out there. So
okay, gotcha. So this is a 2014 PG-13 film that was a second attempt at a live action, I guess, series of films from this franchise. So we had the 1990 and all the three that we talked about then. We've talked about a couple of the animated ones, and now we're back to live action. I know we talked about this a little bit at the end of last episode, Dan, but just remind people, what was your experience with this movie coming into this viewing, and how long had it been since you had seen this movie?
So it's funny because we were talking about it. I'm like, I didn't see this in theaters. I didn't think I did. But then, good old Letterboxd. I was letterboxing back then. I was able to see, no, I actually did. And I realized I did see it for a podcast. So I was like, able to go back and listen to what I thought about it then, and I still think the same here. I know going in, I wasn't super looking forward to it. I was curious, but there was so much I don't know if I want to call it controversy, but the moment the trailer came out and we saw the new look of them, there was all the comparisons to things like Shrek. Michael Bay's name was attached to it, so that brought with it a lot, and the casting seemed to be questionable. So I wasn't super excited for it. I had like a small slimmer of hope that maybe it would just be fun, because I do like the first Transformers movie. Like, I'm not a huge Transformers fan, but I thought the first film was at least fun. I'm like, maybe it'll be enjoyable. Maybe we'll get something out of it. But I did not like it in 2014, and I have not seen it since then. And we'll see if my opinion has changed.
What podcast did you do for this? Did I do one?
No, I don't know if we did one it wasn't for Cinema Geeks, because it was for Talking in Circles.
Okay, gotcha. I probably did talk about it on some form of a podcast somewhere, and I've just probably completely forgotten. So I had seen this in the theater in 2014, and I remember, and this might have been something I was just venting on Twitter or some other social media, or maybe it was via podcast. I think it might have been on Twitter. I forgot of what my gripes were with this film back then. I remember at the time not being super happy about the film and not being a huge fan. I think the only reason I saw the sequel was because it was a group of us going, and we just thought we could have fun with it or whatever. But so I remember what my opinion was, but I didn't remember why until I rewatched it here. And then I was like, oh, I remember I had a big problem with this part, or I remember I had a big problem with this aspect, or this plot line, or this whatever. So it's going to be interesting to go back through to see if we share some of those opinions. But yeah, I was not a huge fan of this in 2014, and we'll get into if that has changed for me as well. So my first note here when I started watching this kind of goes right back to what we talked about what you were just talking about, which was the visual aspect. I think that's the first thing people reacted to via the trailer and all this other stuff. You said the comparisons to Shrek. My first question I wrote down when I was watching the rewatch here was, why are the turtles on steroids?
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand the character design at all on in this series, but I know at the time I had a bigger problem with it probably in 2014 because it was like new and I was younger and this, that, and the other, and I thought, well, maybe I'll get past it when I rewatch this. I still, watching it this last week, still have a problem with the look of this.
Yeah, they don't look all that appealing. One, like, they don't look like ninjas per se. They're so like bulking and out of place, so it just seems like, I don't know, it seems like the opposite of what you'd want. I do like how they're very distinct from one another. I'll give them that. Like, they don't all look the same, just with different headbands, although that was kind of the point back in the day. But I get, like, trying something new and how they have like different aspects to them. Like, the Donnie stuff's a little overblown with the glasses, and at least they just like, okay, let's go with the personality as much as we can. Raphael being the biggest, I think, is the concept. I don't mind. It's the execution I find to be rather odd, and like Mikey has a bit like his complex, even like his face is much more emote than the other characters, which I get what they're going for, but it just also like it's almost like Uncanny Valley per se. Like it just doesn't look right, and they don't look like turtles. I remember there was like discussion about them being aliens. I don't know if that was a rumor or what it was, but and I think like them being gigantic kind of leads to a lot of issues because them being these like they say 6 feet, but I feel like they're like 8 feet tall the way that they walk around and move. And then because of that, you need to make Shredder into an even bigger foe. So he's basically a transformer. I mean, I'm all for doing new things, but I was not a fan of how it all came together.
Yeah, so I think the thing visually, obviously, I felt like they were too big. I felt like they were not as emotive as there was so much going on with them. And I know this isn't Michael Bay's fault, but it reminds me of a similar thing that was one of my biggest complaints with some of the Transformers films was there's so much going on and it gets hard to follow. Like it's hard to follow, especially with like you're talking about with Shredder. Like there's just so many blades and so much metal and so much CG going on that like it's similar to like how some of the Transformers were so metallic and had all these different pieces and this, that, and the other. And in the Transformers, I think what they did is that as time went on is they started adding more of the color back in. So they would give more of the reds and the blues and whatnot. So you can kind of get some more distinct, because otherwise it was just all of these silver metalish things clashing with each other. And you're like, I don't know what's what. I don't know where one begins and the other ends and like this, that, and the other. So it had a little bit of that for me. I wasn't a huge fan of Raphael having like a bandana instead of a headband, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like I know that's their way of like making it more distinct, but it just made him look weird to me because of how it makes like it just took less of him, or it took more of him away in a way for me and just covered it up. So I wanted to see more emotions from all of the turtles. I remember at the time I didn't mind Michelangelo as far as like the characters go, but I think everything is just a little overdone in a way, like you're talking about. I don't know. I just was not a big fan of them being as hulking as they were. And as far as the cast goes, obviously we're going to get a completely different cast here. So we're going to kind of run down everybody that's involved, and then I'll take your thoughts on more than just the visuals, but just kind of like how you feel like they kind of fit the characters or if they worked or didn't work. So obviously we have Johnny Knoxville as Leonardo. I know that made waves when that was announced. We have Jeremy Howard Donatello, Alan Ritchson, Raphael. I'm not familiar with either of those people. Noel Fisher as Michelangelo. We have Tony Shalhoub doing the voice of Splinter. Most people know him from like Monk and a couple other shows. Obviously, we have another Transformers connection because we got Megan Fox here as April O'Neil, Will Arnett as Vern Fenwick. We even have a little kind of cameo of Whoopi Goldberg as Bernadette Thompson. So they kind of switched a role from the cartoon. We have Tohoru Masamune as Shredder. I don't think I need to get into too many other people. William Fichtner as Eric Sachs. So what did you think of the characters that they chose to involve in this, the people they have playing them, how they're portrayed? Any other thoughts on that type of stuff?
I thought the casting in this is so random. It is like it is so weird. Like Johnny Knoxville as Leonardo, I do not understand that casting choice. Like, no. In any way, shape, or form. Like I think Johnny Knoxville is fine, but nothing about him. Even like it was so distracting. It was just so distracting because it always felt like Johnny Knoxville. The other turtles I thought were pretty strong. I thought like especially Noah Fisher, like Noel Fisher, who I don't know anything about. I thought his Mikey was really good. I thought he executed it pretty well, and same with the others. But also Tony Shalhoub as Splinter, like it's same thing. Like I just hear Tony Shalhoub, and also I think if you're gonna have like a secret bad guy, don't cast William Fichtner because it's like the guy just eludes evil. Like he might be a nice guy in real life, but like he just seems like okay, he's not good. Like right. And then
what do you think of the Megan Fox Will Arnett combo?
Oh, man, like I don't think Megan Fox is a bad actress per se. I think you just have to place her in the right roles. This wasn't the right role for her. I don't think she can carry a movie like this. And so much of this is her movie. Like the first 20 minutes is the April O'Neil show. She does not come across as this like tough as nails reporter that's trying to get the story. Like she does seem like maybe an entertainment reporter or something like that.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to act against nothing because when you're acting against these turtles who are not really there or they
Right.
have stand-ins, and I don't think she excelled there at all. I did like when she was working with Will Arnett. Like I thought they had some good back and forth here and there. And Will Arnett, I thought he played that comedy role, well enough. I like him. He was Will Arnett. He basically was who he always is. But yeah, I don't want to. I think the casting just doesn't make sense, and they didn't place the actors in the best opportunities to be successful, starting with Megan Fox.
Yeah, I think everything you just said there was like all of my thoughts. So I 100% agree. I think it's just weird to me. Like, okay, so you want Johnny Knoxville in this movie. Cool. All right. So there's 4 different turtles with 4 different distinct personalities historically. And your choice is Leonardo.
Exactly.
Like, he's from Jackass. Like, wouldn't you put him as Michelangelo? Like, or I don't know. Like, would you put him as the leader? Like, he's the serious straight man of the group.
Yeah.
So that's weird to me. I agree. I like Michelangelo. I like the rest of the turtles seem fine. Michelangelo to me was the standout. Will Arnett is fine in that role. I think he does that pretty well. But Tony Shalhoub's distracting. Johnny Knoxville's distracting. Megan Fox is Megan Fox, and it's just seems like misplacement there. It's nothing against her. It's just she doesn't belong in this role. She doesn't belong in this movie to me. And I was fine with Whoopi Goldberg in her little small role, I guess. I
didn't get what that was. I forgot she was in this movie. I'm like, why is Whoopi Goldberg here? And this small, like she was doing someone a favor, or she needed to get her SAG card. So it's like, I need to be in a movie. What's that? What's playing down the street? Turtles. All right, give me. I don't know. It was just so random. That is kind of the thing with Michael Bay movies. Sometimes, especially they're just random stars that show up. And sometimes it works, like Bernie Mac as a car salesman, Whoopi Goldberg as the editor-in-chief of a newspaper. And it was, it was take it or leave it.
The other thing they do with this film is they completely, and unless this is somewhere in the comics that I'm just not aware of, they completely rewrite the origin of the Turtles. Like, this is, to me, nothing that I had seen prior to this. Maybe it matches up with some book or a comic book or something somewhere, but I'm not aware of that. And the interesting thing that they do is, again, like you're saying, it's almost like the April O'Neil story because they write her into everything. This is not just a reporter that's reporting on the Foot Clan that happens to stumble across the Turtles. No, now she is like the person that saved the Turtles once upon a time. And her dad is part of the group that created the Turtles, which I don't think ever had been a thing before. And so instead of like the whole Splinter Shredder thing, you have this Eric Sachs and Dr. O'Neill creating, without getting into the specifics, creating the Turtles. And then Shredder's playing a part in this as well. What did you think of kind of flipping all of this on? And like for a second, I was like, okay, this is a way to make April, I guess, connected more with the Turtles. But how do you think that all played out?
I know with the IDW series, like her role was changed a bit, and I can't remember if it's been such a long time since I read the beginning of it, like if they took inspiration from that, but they might have. But they also have like a whole reincarnation thing with that, which they did not get into, at least in this installment. I get what they're going for, but it felt like a cheap way to get a connection between April and the Turtles, especially because it doesn't really come into play until they meet for the first time. Like maybe if it opened up on a scene, like that's the opening scene of April being within that lab or something like that, but it comes so out of nowhere. Like that's not ever really brought up that much, and it feels very forced, unnecessary. I would also say, like I don't see like how it really benefits the story all that much, outside of like giving her this connection to the Sax character. But I was not necessarily a fan of it. It just seemed a bit dumb. Like I think you could do that, but it was just poorly executed in this.
Yeah, and then I think the other thing that kind of bothered me a little bit with that storyline is that, okay, so then you have like the classic, the 2 doctors that are working together and they have a disagreement or this, that, and the other, whatever. So one's good and one's evil. And then like, to me, you shoehorn Shredder into this somehow. Like, yeah. And I didn't quite follow or understand like the dynamics and how that all worked. And then we also have Karai again, which we've seen a couple different times. So she's in here. and
Yeah.
it just seemed, again, it was getting convoluted. Like, okay, like O'Neill and Sachs were enough, and now you got all these other backdrops of things. And I remember what really, really, really bugged me when I watched this in 2014 is that there's a whole set of dialogue from William Fichtner as Eric Sachs here, where he's like explaining his motivations, and this guy is being portrayed as like the, I don't know, like the richest of rich guys. Like he's like an Elon Musk. He's like a Tony Stark. Like he's got like all of this stuff, right? Like he has 3 different divisions of his company, and he's controlling all this different, like there's a biotech, and there's lots of different stuff. They name them all at one point.
Yeah.
So he's like already portrayed as like probably one of the most successful, one of the most net worth human beings in this universe that we've created. And then his motivation behind the entire movie is to become more rich.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I remember when I heard that line when I was watching the regular movie, I was like, what? Like, that's his motivation? Like, it's not, like, there's no other depth to it. The rich guy wants to be more rich. Like,
yeah. And the way they go about it, too, it feels like you're going to end up, like, hurting yourself in the way you're going to negatively impact New York than you're going to. Like, it just seems like this is not your best option. And
right.
So and to go back to the whole so yeah, like the IDW comics, April O'Neil she's an intern, so it's not as a kid, but she's an intern. She names the turtles, so they kind of took that, but they did their own spin with it. Yeah, Shredder is basically like the goon in this. He's like how James Bond villains have their, the guy that throws the hat or Jaws.
Right.
That's kind of his role in
Job.
this. Odd Job. I couldn't think of his name.
I only know that from the game. Just kidding.
It's not really his story as much. He's not as connected. We don't see that, with the first film and General Turtles. There's always that connection to Splinter and Shredder, and it's not really explored here. Like, I thought the opening of like how they introduced Shredder was really cool. Like, it definitely, like, okay, this guy is a pretty big badass. And although they showed his face, which seems counterintuitive to his character, but whatever. But yeah, Shredder seems like an afterthought, and I guess that was kind of the point. He was supposed to be a red herring, that he's the bad guy, but no, it's Sax. But then it makes less sense, and the whole plan doesn't make any sense. It's not making sense is like the forte of this film.
That should have been on the poster. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because there's just so many things that it feels like there was more to this movie that got cut out, or like, like it just feels weird in the editing. Like there's that, the one action scene where they're going down the hill, the mountain, which I'm like, what mountain is this in New York City, near New York City? But logistics don't make sense. But like, there's this whole thing with like Raphael hurting his shell, and it's like, okay, we're actually having some, some stakes here. Like this, it has to be careful. But then 2 seconds later, he uses his shell to like take on a Humvee, and he's perfectly okay. So it's like, where I don't like the term plot holes or anything like that, but there's just a lot of things that don't make sense with this movie that are just there and they don't go anywhere, or it's a mess. It is a mess of a movie.
I remember I wrote that down as well. I'm like, so his shell is a big deal until it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
he's Wolverine. That's a healing factor. I don't know.
Yeah, I personally think this is one of the worst depictions of Shredder I've ever seen. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't start cool or anything like that, but like, it's again like we jump to Super Shredder immediately, and then he's just got like these blades that he can shoot out, and then they can return to him. But then he's got blades on top of blades, and like they hype him up so much that it's like, okay, like there's no point in having the turtles fight him. Nobody can beat this. Like, you've created like the ultimate sword machine here, and I don't know. It just, again, it was like a red herring. It was an afterthought. It was. I just thought it was pointless. Like, he might as well not have been in here. Like, just have Karai with the foot soldiers, I guess. But the other thing that I was wondering what your thoughts were, Splinter gets depicted a little bit different here. It's almost like they saw the Star Wars movie when, and it might have not even come out by this point, but there's the Star Wars movie when Yoda's like all of a sudden doing backflips and jumping around and like being like a badass Jedi.
Yeah.
And it's like they wanted to do that with Splinter because now he's got this tail that's like massive and has like all of these abilities to like pick people up, to throw them, to trip people. Like, and I don't remember ever seeing that from Splinter.
No.
Like, what did you think of this new, like, I guess Splinter is on steroids too. What did you think of that?
He's like the lizard from the Spider-Man movie, like where his tail can do everything. Yeah, I guess Clone Wars is when Yoda went crazy, so that would have been early 2000s, so that would have come out by now. I really disliked everything they did with Splinter in this. I disliked the look of him. I mean, I get he's a rat, but it was just really disturbing.
The other thing they did with the Turtles, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about, this is going back to when I was talking about how like it's hard to like get like to see what's exactly going on, is they all have these unique, I guess is a word, chest pieces. Like instead of their turtle shell.
Yeah.
And it like, I guess it's supposed to fit their personalities or whatever, but that too seemed like going too far to me. Like I didn't quite understand why they had what they had on their chest. I remember Raphael has something specific. I don't know if all four of them did, but it seemed like another way to like make it less just, I don't know, maybe more unique.
Leonardo like has like a wooden like sticks thing.
Yeah.
But the others just have like straps and stuff like that are
okay.
I think,
maybe it's
the
Leonardo.
Weapons.
Yeah.
Like Raphael has like the Rambo like like holster thing, and I mean that's the thing with their costumes. They're just really busy. There's a lot there.
Right.
The other thing too with Splinter is, we mentioned how there's really no connection with Shredder. How he learns martial arts, and in this he learns martial arts through reading a book. I get it. Like you can learn martial arts on your own, I guess, but like
I gotta start reading more books.
Like it seems a little bit far fetched a bit, and like the reason he does it is because they're too involved in like pop culture and stuff like that, and that to me is less satisfying of a reasoning. Like, oh, just as a they learn martial arts as a distraction, than like there being some sort of point to it, or like him having some sort of idea of honor or whatever it may be. Here they're just like we needed a hobby, so we learned to be ninjas.
There's another thing that you talked about, how they just like do something and then forget about it. So they did that with the shell, and then with Raphael's shell, and then they forget about it. So there's like entire sequences in the first half of the movie where April is trying to tell everybody she knows about the Turtles. Yeah. Like she's trying to tell her boss, she's trying to tell all of the people at the station, she's trying to tell everybody she can tell. And then apparently that didn't happen, because at the end, like there's this whole like sentimental moment where they're like the Turtles are thanking April for not telling anyone when she could have. I was very thrown off by that. I was like, maybe I watched the wrong movie. Like I swear she was trying to tell everybody and their brother about this, and now you're like acting like she didn't. That was weird to me. The other thing was, I did learn something from this film, and that is, you can lose like almost all of the blood in your body, but if somebody gives you some adrenaline, you're fine.
Yes. Adrenaline's the key, always.
You don't need to get any of that blood back. You can just go kick ass, like if you got some adrenaline. So that was interesting. So obviously pizza is a thing with the Turtles franchise. Like it's been there since for as long as I can remember. And there is product placement in the original live action films with the whole delivery, and it's free because he can't get it through the sewer grate in time or whatever. That I didn't mind. The Pizza Hut product placement in this film is so ridiculously heavy-handed to the point where it's a freaking commercial almost.
Yeah, they go to town on like explaining why that slice of pizza is so good, and then the funniest thing is, so there was probably pizza that came out that was connected to this movie. There was probably like a special recipe or whatever. But he's going and he's naming like all of the cheeses and whatnot, and then some of it's just blatant nonsense, like stuff that doesn't even exist in the Pizza Hut world. So it's like, oh, it's got this cheese. I'm like, no, they've never had that cheese. But it was so heavy-handed. It like actually became a commercial, and it was really off-putting to me, and I did not like that at all. So that was another note I had. Anything else that story-wise, plot-wise, or anything like that you wanted to get off your chest that you didn't like about this one? Yeah, I've been really negative about this. It's one thing for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 to not be successful. It's just when they don't like have much of a budget, they're just trying to make it work. This thing was so overbloated with everything. Like the other piece I didn't talk about was I found the sound design in this so aggressive. And like everyone sounded like a transformer. Like everyone had the like same type of sound effect and everything, and it was just always in your face and always like unnecessary. But again, they're ninjas, so I feel like it never really came across that way per se. So
Right. It somehow did really well at the box office. Just to be, I'm into
yeah,
all the Transformers films, I guess, but the budget was like 125, 150, somewhere in that range, and it almost did 500. So obviously it did well at the box office from a financial standpoint. Not so well when it comes to any sort of review or critical response. Currently has, if this is up to date, currently has a 21% Rotten Tomatoes. Not a lot of positive things. You can go online and read like 100 terrible reviews about this. It was nominated for some Golden Raspberries, as well as some Kids' Choice Awards, because that's always a thing.
yeah.
But the Golden Raspberry nominations for Worst Picture, Worst Prequel, Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel, Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, Worst Supporting Actress, which Megan Fox did win that one.
Yeah. I feel like I said, I feel like she was just set up for failure in this. It wasn't. She's been good in some stuff like Jennifer's Body, and I think she's, if you put her in the right role, she can, she can work. But in this, it's just like she's not the type of actress to like command the screen when everything around her is like artificial.
Yeah, and it's just too. It's like there's so many different moving parts that it's like like you said, is this April O'Neil's movie? Is it the Turtles movie? Is it, like who's the focus? I mean, we have Shredder. It's definitely not his movie. We have the whole thing with Eric Sachs and April O'Neil's dad and a lot of April O'Neil-esque things. So it's kind of like I just don't understand. Like this to me was, I don't know how this was written. I don't know. There's like 3 different writers attached to it. That's fine. But this to me is what I think about when they talk about like Michael Bay getting like a writing room together, or like assembling like a panel of groups, or like a room full of people to get ideas. Like I can't imagine one person by themselves creating this movie as it is. Like it just seems so disjointed that there had to be ideas coming from multiple people that was just like, yeah, we can make that work. Yeah, we can fit that in there. Yeah, we can do that. And it just does not work together.
Like I said, it feels like there's a lot either missing or like edited or like adjusted on the fly, or whatever it may be. Like they're just, because you look at it, like I can't even point to a character that had development. Like who was different at the beginning, at the end? I guess maybe April, because she's no longer chasing to become a real reporter, which seems like not the type of development you want. Like I don't know. It just seems like none of I mean, I guess the really like Raphael being more of a rebel or something like that, I guess, but it doesn't even that come to a great resolution. There's just, like you said, you don't know whose movie this is, because at first it's April's, but then once things start getting going, she's lost. But also putting her in the action, I felt very forced, like to try to make, like, I think that's something the early Turtles films did, was, April had her role, she played it well, but they didn't force her into scenes that she didn't need to be in. This, like Megan Fox always has to be there. And I don't think it's necessary. Like I will say, and I haven't really said much positive, I do think when it comes to like the personality of the Turtles, voice acting aside, like I do think they did that pretty well. Like I think the Turtles feel like the Turtles. It's not that hard. I mean they're archetypes, so you can't really mess that up. Although, like we mentioned, sometimes they have. They just don't get that many opportunities to be the Turtles. Like we don't get those character moments. The only thing we get is like that one small scene of them going up the elevator.
Yeah.
Where they start like beatboxing. Like that was it, and that was a nice moment. But then it's like
the best scene in the film.
Then we're gonna go fight Transformer Super Shredder, who puts like Kevin Nash to shame, I guess, because he's like 10 feet taller than he's like the Yeti. That must have been the guy that was the Yeti.
Yeah, that's there we go. The other thing they did is they tried to make everybody in the movie have a crush on April O'Neil.
Yeah, again, that's always weird to me.
Like not just Vern or whatever his name is, but the Turtles, Michelangelo especially, it was like a big thing. So that's weird. It was interesting watching this post-pandemic, I guess, for some sick way, because they're actually, the plot is unleashing a pandemic, and they talk about quarantine and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that has a whole different meaning these days. So
yeah.
That was interesting, but yeah, I am not a big fan of this film. I do remember enjoying the elevator scene. Like I said, Michelangelo I think is good. I think you're right with the depiction of the Turtles. I think Will Arnett's fine. Everything else is bad about this movie.
Yeah, it's so. I was hoping like, maybe Maybe I wasn't wrong. Maybe I was just too harsh about it when I watched it originally. I think I liked it less this time. Like
I do too. And I kind of went into this not remembering how much I disliked it, like to the point. Like I remember like, oh, this was like a movie, but I forgot that it had actual things that made me mad.
Yeah, it's just so sloppily done. Like I guess it just feels like there was no thought put behind things. It was just a random like, let's do this and then do this and do this.
Right.
And then, like, this sounds cool. This will be interesting. Like, let's do something different and new. Like, oh, we'll do this different. I'm okay with changing things, but like the changes kind of didn't make any sense, or they were kind of silly, and then they didn't necessarily lead to anything different. So I don't know. I feel like we've kind of beaten this dead horse to
it. Yeah, for sure. So there's another live action film that follows this one. It comes out 2 years later in 2016. That one's called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. And just as a sneak peek, I don't remember this one at all. I don't remember what my opinion was of this one. I'm sure I saw it because I'm pretty sure
I have not. I've only watched the beginning of it. Like I remember people saying, actually, it's better. It's good. I didn't see it in theaters because I wasn't podcasting at that time. I don't think, or wasn't. And then I've like attempted to watch it like a couple times, and have always fallen asleep. Now that's not necessarily the movie's fault. I'm really good at sleeping, so we'll see. You know, so I'm kind of interested to see like, is it better? It'd be hard to be worse. Yeah. So I'm hoping for some improvement.
I'm intrigued just because it's going to be one of those where I sit down to watch it, and then that's when I'm going to know for sure if I'd seen it before or not. And right now I'm like, I thought I saw this in the theater, but I'm reading the main plot synopsis, which basically says that follows the Ninja Turtles who, after defeating the Shredder, must face an even bigger foe, the dreaded Krang. I am intrigued to see if this 2016 is any better or not. And if you guys want to know what our thoughts are on that one, you'll have to tune into our next episode when we do cover Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, the 2016 live action film. Then we'll have a couple more animated films to cover before we catch up and get ready for the film coming out in just a little bit here this year. So, Dan, anything else that you're doing right now as far as things that people can keep an eye out if they want to hear more of your opinions on stuff?
You can just find me at Comic Concierge on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram is where I put most of my stuff. Also on that new Threads thing, which it's just like Twitter, but just, I don't know. It seems kind of stupid. I don't know why we need another one, but I guess Twitter is just going downhill. So anyways, but yeah, Comic Concierge and all those social media platforms, you can find me.
And you can search me out at either OptimusSolo, or you can check out my YouTube channel, Geek Showcase. You can also check out the main website, Geekcast Radio Network, for any other geek-related topics that Mike or Steve or anybody else that they have going on is putting out. Lots of geeky topics, cartoons, comic book stuff, toy stuff. So anything like that might interest you, go ahead and check out their social medias and the main website as well. And that does it for this episode of Cinema Geeks. We'll be back next time to talk more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.